Joined now by Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell. And I wondered, from your eyes, in your many years serving and in government, what you made of what the president did last night.
Chris, I want to thank you first for letting me see your opening scenes and hear your opening commentary. I have to say that if I were watching Beijing and Tiananmen Square, or if I were watching Rome in Mussolini's time or Nuremberg in Hitler's time, I wouldn't have probably seen two different scenes, except that there was no killing yet. And I have to say that one of the things that Colin Powell and I used to talk about periodically with some passion was the civil-military relationship in our country. And we both admitted that the 200 plus years of Republican democracy that we've enjoyed has been assured largely because of that relationship. And now I see these scenes like you've showed and like I've been seeing for the last 96 hours or so, and I see that relationship fraying and eroding in front of my eyes. And it really concerns me because we were right. It is the essence of our democracy. It's the reason we're still here. And now I see it disappearing before my eyes.
I want to ask about that Lakota helicopter and the show of force, which to me, I mean, the park police were the agents that cleared Lafayette Park. But, you know, some set of orders were communicated down some kind of chain of command to have a U.S. military helicopter fly low over a civilian population assembled to protest as a show of force. Are you troubled by the fact that that chain of command, that set of orders, wherever they came from, ultimately succeeded in being carried out?
I am, and I'm concerned because I know General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, however he says that name, is not in the chain of command. He is an advisor to the Secretary of Defense and to the President and to the National Security Council. He is not a member of the chain of command. Powell used to say, I don't even command my secretary here. And he was right. He didn't command a single soldier. So what is that guy doing? What is he doing stagecrafting his appearance there in battle fatigues with the President of the United States? And your question, who did order that? Was it the D.C. Guard commander? Was it the Military District of Washington commander? Who ordered that? And who told him to do that? If it was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he's out of order completely. If it was the Military District of Washington commander who decided to do that, under whose orders did he decide to do it? Under President Trump's? Under Secretary Esper's? These are questions that are going to roil around for a long time to come. It's not like we haven't done similar things before. Indeed, we had a segment of the country, you may recall, in 1861 that tried to destroy the United States of America and formed its own confederacy to do so. So we have had, quote unquote, American soldiers shooting at American people all over the country. This is not something we want to happen again. I thought we had pushed that dog away and we were, in a sense, in a civil military relationship that was sacrosanct and that would continue to protect this republic. As I said before, the social contract is eroding, the civil military relationship is eroding, and you have to point a finger, although I will admit it started majorly after 9/11 with my own administration, George W. Bush's administration. But it has been given an incredible catalytic effect by this president. This president is something that I never thought I would see in the White House, despite H.L. Mencken's prophecy that someday we'd get the guy we deserve.